Imagine sitting high inside a massive stadium, surrounded by thousands of people, watching the biggest event of the year unfold far below you. Suddenly, a massive blimp appears overhead, announcing that millions of dollars will be dropped into the stadium, sending excitement and hope through the entire crowd. In the luxury boxes, the VIPs celebrate as money rains directly into their hands, letting them grab cash and advantages before it ever reaches the rest. People below imagine normal prices, still thinking a $5 hot dog applies to them, unaware that the value of money is already quietly changing above. By the time the money finally reaches workers, prices have already jumped, forcing sellers to raise costs just to survive the demand shock created above. Those closest to the money spend freely at old prices, enjoying abundance, while late receivers are left choosing between essentials as purchasing power quietly evaporates. For most people, inflation isn't a chart or a headline. It's the moment you reach the counter, look at the price, and realize your paycheck arrived too late. As prices climb faster than wages, necessities like food and groceries outweigh savings, slowly tipping the scale against workers who rely only on cash. This imbalance reflects the Cantillon Effect, where those closest to new money gain assets first, while others face higher prices later. As inflation spreads through the economy, wages lag behind rising costs, leaving the middle class squeezed, while headlines warn of recession risks. Like running harder on a treadmill, people work more and more, but rising prices keep pulling the finish line farther away every single year. Money is never neutral, because when new money enters the system, it always benefits some groups first, while quietly disadvantaging everyone else later. When money is created, it doesn't spread evenly. It flows through a system, transforming into assets, goods, and prices long before it ever reaches ordinary workers. This idea was first explained centuries ago by economist Richard Cantillon, who showed that money enters the economy at specific points, not all at once. Cantillon observed that when new money is distributed by rulers or elites first, those closest benefit early, while others face higher prices later. The flow always follows this path: banks first, executives next, suppliers after, and workers last, each step facing higher prices as money moves downstream. For those at the very end, everyday survival becomes harder as basic necessities multiply in price, while incomes stay flat, turning inflation into a silent tax on the poor. When central banks create new money digitally, it flows first into commercial banks and financial institutions, long before it ever reaches households and ordinary consumers. As new money expands the supply, asset prices respond first, rising sharply for those positioned early, while everyday goods and wages adjust much later. Money enters at the top through central banks, flowing first to banks and elites, then corporations, while workers at the bottom receive it last after prices already rise. Inside financial institutions, new money circulates first through markets and trading desks, boosting asset prices and profits long before its effects reach the real economy. Assets like stocks and real estate surge in value over time, meaning those who already own them benefit first, while others struggle to catch up. Over decades, this creates a widening wealth gap where asset holders pull further ahead while wage earners struggle to keep pace despite working just as hard. Meanwhile, those who own assets watch their wealth compound quietly over time, benefiting from rising prices while the system continues rewarding proximity to newly created money. As newly created money floods asset markets, housing prices surge violently, rewarding owners while pushing home ownership further out of reach for everyone arriving later. With ultra-cheap debt flowing from central banks, corporations and large investors leverage endlessly, driving stock prices higher, while small investors watch gains race ahead of them. This delay is called inflation lag, where asset owners adjust early, while workers remain trapped behind rising prices long before wages finally catch up. Worker productivity has surged dramatically over decades, yet wage growth failed to match it, revealing how gains increasingly flow upward instead of rewarding labor. This widening Cantillon gap shows productivity soaring while real wages crawl upward, confirming that most economic gains bypass workers and accumulate with asset holders. This diagram makes it clear. Money flows easily into assets, while wages remain constrained, creating a persistent Cantillon gap that favors ownership over labor. Many people blame themselves, thinking they're lazy or unfocused, unaware that the system quietly shifts pressure onto individuals rather than structural economic forces. Those who receive new money first gain real advantages, while those last in line face higher prices, reduced purchasing power, and fewer meaningful opportunities. The middle class keeps running faster just to stay in place, working harder each year while the finish line of financial security keeps moving farther away. While wage earners spend most income on essentials, asset holders allocate a growing share towards investments and luxuries, allowing rising prices to work for them instead of against them. What looks like normal inflation acts like a hidden tax, quietly transferring purchasing power from everyday consumers to those positioned closer to newly created money. At the pump, rising fuel prices arrive before paychecks adjust, forcing workers to absorb costs immediately, while earlier recipients already spent new money elsewhere. Mortgage payments rise as asset prices inflate, meaning homeowners with debt face higher costs, while asset owners benefit from appreciation funded by newly created money. These two forces collide. The Cantillon effect reshapes who benefits from new money, while the Diderot effect drives consumption patterns that lock people into rising costs. Money arrives unevenly through the Cantillon effect, while the Diderot effect quietly tempts people to upgrade lifestyles, draining savings before wealth ever has time to grow. Understanding these forces isn't about giving up, but recognizing the rules of the game, so you stop blaming yourself and start making smarter, strategic choices. The real advantage comes from learning how the system works, then positioning your income, savings, and decisions to move closer to money's starting point. Without that positioning, money pours through your hands like water, working harder every year yet never accumulating, no matter how disciplined or determined you feel. Cash feels safe, but inflation silently erodes its weight, tipping the scale against savers while time steadily drains purchasing power away. The real divide isn't effort, intelligence, or morality. It's whether you earn income once or own systems that pay you repeatedly over time. Capital acts like a submarine. While surface incomes get battered by inflation storms, asset ownership stays protected, compounding quietly beneath the waves. When inflation rises, assets gain weight on the scale, while cash quietly loses purchasing power, tipping the balance further towards owners every cycle. When inflation runs higher than fixed loan rates, debt quietly shrinks in real terms, rewarding borrowers as time erodes what they truly owe. Inflation quietly reduces cash value over time, meaning money held idle loses purchasing power each year even without spending a single dollar. Using depreciating cash to repay fixed-rate debt effectively benefits borrowers, since inflation reduces the real value of what they owe over time. This system quietly rewards asset-owning debtors, while passive savers are punished for inaction, watching their money lose value as inflation does the judging. Fixed salaries lag behind inflation, while adjustable income rises with economic pressure, quietly protecting earners who can reprice their time or output. The real shift happens when you stop chasing short-term wins and start positioning your money where time, inflation, and leverage work for you. When income relies only on paychecks, you're forced into defense mode, constantly shielding yourself from inflation, debt traps, and unexpected financial shocks. Escaping this trap requires a shift in strategy, focusing on high-demand skills, developing rare expertise, or building ownership that scales beyond time. Relying only on hard work and discipline without leverage often leaves people exhausted, holding effort instead of results, wondering why progress still feels painfully slow. By the time most people finally receive the money, inflation has already done its damage, leaving them with cash that buys far less than they expected. The solution isn't chasing more cash, but positioning yourself closer to where money starts, through assets, ownership, and productive capital.